this certification for the next one, right? As most of you will be passing certification by May 31st. I want to hear good news in email. All right, we're going to do our official last lab. So we need to download the most recent lab document. I think I talked about that before. So in this lab, we're going to fuzz, and fuzzing is a way that we can generate different input to get some kind of output, even though it's error, it's meaningful in cybersecurity. We are going to use Kali Linux, the latest version. I think this is last year version. You want to use the 26.1 right now, right? So we only need to run update. You don't have to run upgrade when you boot your virtual machine. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my VirtualBox. I already downloaded and extracted my VM. So by now, we should be very comfortable with loading our virtual machine, right? I had it under my downloads folder from a while back. I just re-extract or decompress this version. I had multiple, had downloaded over time. So show more options, go to 7-zip, extract file, and I have this folder saved under downloads folder after it's extracted. So in VirtualBox, we're going to add the VM to the playlist by clicking add. We are going to go to downloads and the extracted folder. Open the subfolder and find my blue file. Click open. Anytime that you are performing security scans, you need to up the RAM, the base memory, and the processor. So click settings. And we want to change this to 8,000. For the processor, we're going to modify this to 4. Sure. Yeah. You have enough. So yeah, you can use 6 core. Yeah, we have 16, so there's plenty of room. I typically do 2, 4, 8, right? 10, but you want to reserve some for the whole system. That's good enough. So once we change the setting, we're going to boot our virtual machine by clicking start, and that's the beginning part, as usual, if you're doing Kali Linux Lab. We're here in step 10. Once it boots, we're going to go ahead and access the system by typing in username and password. Once you have your desktop, we're going to use mostly just a terminal today. You might open things up in browser when you load your web server with the application, right? So your application is going to run on your local system, and we would try to interface with the application. We would try to fuzz it. Okay, so log in. All right, once I'm logged in, I'm going to open up my terminal. And I'm going to run the update, which is in step 12. So sudo app update. We don't need to do an upgrade. If you want, you can upgrade the OS. If you're installing a lot of software packages, I would recommend that. But for this one, we just need to run the update. After we run the update, we are going to install DVWA, which is a package that contains source code for our web application. It's already pre-written, so we don't have to code it. So you just need to install it so you can use it to test. So the application itself, hi, good night, have very little security. And then we are going to start the web service and our database service. So we're going to use MySQL. And MySQL comes down with DVWA now, right? Along with Apache, which is the web, and this is for the database. Okay. So after I do the update, I'm going to do sudo apt install dvwa-y, so I don't have to answer the prompt. Now, in the prior session, we had added the PHP admin, but we no longer need this package as PHP is already equipped with the software that you have installed here. So you don't need this component. So you're gonna skip 15 to 19. Okay. So once I have DVWA installed, and if there's no issue, right, I'm gonna go ahead and do sudo service Apache 2 start. That's going to activate the web services on my local system. That is, I'm hosting web server, right? As a web server is my local machine. And then I'm going to turn on the database side for my web app. The database contains user accounts, so and if it doesn't give you any error, everything is good. It just pop up. It shows the next pop-up. So we are going to then start our web application. Okay. And when you get this prompt, you're going to just put in the login for Kali. So it's going to load the application interface with the login. And this is step 21. We're going to log in as admin and admin. By default, that's the account. So I log in as admin and admin at step 21, right? I'm going to then reset my database. So I'm going to move this. Let's manage things a little bit better over here. Okay. So I'm here at step 21, this step right here. Once I access, right, I need to set up my DVWA. So you're going to click set up or reset DB. So scroll down and then you're going to find the button on the bottom. So click that. So what that does is it's going to establish the database with the default accounts that were built with the application, right? Some accounts are there and the database name and all of those things. Now, if it prompts you this to log back in, right, you can use admin, and if that doesn't work, admin and password, because there was a prompt that it shows me earlier. I didn't slow down to show it to you. But after it logs you off, after you reset your database, your password changed to password. It's no longer admin, right? It did tell you that, but you might overlooked it. On Monday when I did this, I didn't have to relog back in, but if in the case that it prompts you the relogin page, you are going to use admin and password. Okay. So now we're in the application. This is basically it has tools for you to practice brute force or different technique in pen testing. You are going to go down to DVWA security, which is near the bottom, your left. You're going to click it and scroll down, and you're going to change your security level to low. Good night. Thank you. So when we change the low to low security configuration, we're going to click submit. Don't forget to click submit. So now I'm able to practice with less security on the app. If it's impossible, right? So this app does have security in different levels. So you can set it to low, and then if you want, you can increase it to medium to see if it works later on, right? Okay, I'm gonna minimize this, and I'm back to the terminal, right? See, it tells me that here's my account. That's how you're able to get that information for 23. We're going to install seclist. This is a repository that contains different Word files in text or other format. You can use it for fuzzing or brute forcing, right? It has many different files for tools. So we're going to do sudo apt yes install seclists. You can also pull it from Git. It's on GitHub. Did you guys see that there's a leak on GitHub? There's a leak. They had data breach. Who doesn't these days? No, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Even the AI is not safe.
Yeah. So like they announced that like 40 company gave like access to like 40 companies. 40 companies have access to the micros, agents, but they only released 10 companies that are using this. So what are the other 30?
Maybe they're using it for testing purposes, not implementing it. Yeah, so there's a difference between implementing it and still checking it out, right? So they probably looking at they're using the data to see if they're implementing it, right? So yeah.
Even Apple, they use that software or whatever to find vulnerabilities within their organization.
Yeah, before you use it, you gotta really see its issue, because once it's rolled, it's a lot harder to fix the problem. Okay, so once we have the list that we need for our fuzz, right? We're gonna use fuzz faster full. This is a way that we can test our web app. The reason why I do a lot of web app stuff is because it's easy for you to set up in Kali Linux. You can see what's happening when you test it. Everybody has a web app, right? So it's a way for us to understand the tool and the weakness of the web app. So this is a fuzzing tool. It's going to generate a get method, which is like landing on a page where you would see that page, that website. So in the back, it will be a get method. Or a post is when you have data input, like typing in a username or a password, right? So you can use get and post parameter. You can also use API for pen testing. So it has a wide variety of uses, but ultimately it's used to determine if the web application has problems. So when we start, we know that Kali Linux already has this installed. So if you want to check it, you can use the which command. I always try to check it out first, right? If it does, it's going to tell you the path of that app, where it's stored. Okay, then I would do step 26. where you would look at the help options where it lists all the options that you can use with the command itself, which is FFUF, fuff, right? So you look down that option and you should be able to answer question A and B of number 26, right? Which option will give you the target URL? So look at the list. The reason why I have you do this is when you use a command in the later steps, you would understand what it's doing, right? So the options tells the system to perform a certain task with that command. Okay? So go down the list and find the dash whatever letter that would match for the URL. And then if I want to do a word list parameter, which I will be also doing later, what is the option? What is the dash and the letter, right? So look at this list. You have to read a little bit and it's quick. Okay. So once we find the answer for those, we're going to do this command, right? Now, because our system, our web application is on our local computer, this is why you see the IP address as a loopback. But in a regular real world practice, this is a public IP address, right? Possibly the port or the extension to where that web app is hosted. You can also use a URL, right? Like a domain name there. But typically, you would plug that in. Okay. So that should also help you answer the last question. All right. So we're going to copy and paste this entire thing. However, if you want to, so let's say that you do this later and it throws an error and you check your command. Likely that your new sec list had changed your file, right? Sometimes they would modify the word list. So you should always go to where this path and then make sure that that file exists. So if it tells you that the file doesn't exist, check, right, the file in sec list, right? So cd into this path and do ls command to check to see if it's there. So we're going to run this entire command. And when you do this, right, you are using a placeholder. So it's going to plug in each word from the list at a time to where it says fuzz, right? It says that fuzz is the placeholder where it's going to replace each of the word on this list right here, right? If you want to, you can access it and like view it. So cd into the path and then you can cat big.txt to see what's on that list. So it's going to plug each word into here. The reason why is when you look at the website, right? When we come back here, you see how there's the extension like a login page, a security page. So it's going to plug in various word in following your IP address and port number where that fuzz section is, right? So like security, login, admin, etc. Whatever that would fit based on this list. So this process is only effective if your list is effective. That's what I'm saying, right? These are pre-built lists that somebody created. So coming back here, we're going to look at this, right? And what I want you to focus on is that when you run this, it tells you that it is using a get method, basically visiting the URL. It's landing on that URL, right? And trying to get some kind of information that's being served by that server. I want you to look at the status code. So status 200 means that it is successful, right? where if you see the 300, like the 301, that's unsuccessful. Okay. So 200 means that it's been completed, successfully completed in acquiring the content for that page. So there's a README, right? When it plugs in database, right, there's 301. Okay. But when it plugs in favicon ICO, it is successful. So when you fuzz, you wanted to see like which word on the list is successful, which input is successful, and which input is not successful. That kind of tells us the structure, right? The beginning pieces of the web app, like its extension here. Okay? So if I'm using a word list, I would use this option, and then you gotta put in the path of that file, right? If you make your own word list, you just need to make sure you tell it where to go find it, right? And it happens to be here because we downloaded SecList, which the Kali Linux had placed it inside USR and share when you install that as a package. Okay, so take a screenshot, look at the result, and I put down, identify the words that output status code 301. 301 just means that it's moved permanently, right? So if you were beginning to fuzz a web app, you want to kind of try different things, and fuzzing allows us to input things that might work and might not work, right? We're focused on the error that shows us move permanently. And I read the italics. The browser receiving the status automatically requests the resources the URL location header, redirecting the user new page. So this is a redirection status code. Okay. So look at each, right? Find the one that has status code and then the parallel. So external got 301, right? Docs got 301. So will I need to put everything down? Yes, right? The more detail oriented you are, and organized you are, the report is going to be better for the analyst. Okay, 28. You're going to run the entire command all the way from the tool FFUF, fuff, to the file, like what you did in the last step. But in this one, right, we are going to use the same web app as the URL is the same. We're going to have a placeholder, but we're going to look for admin, right? In the last one, there's no admin. So this allows us to look for admin panel. Sometimes they build a web application that has an admin panel. This is a way that an administrator can go in to reconfigure, manage the web app, analyze it, access the system from the back, right? So we want to see if it's there, right? It's a 50-50 shot. So if it's not, then it will tell you the result. Now, if you are looking for, so earlier when we logged in, not that one, when we logged into our web app. So before someone would do this, they would navigate around your web app that's publicly available and start looking for certain things from a user interface standpoint, writing down the URL that potentially that they can use to fuzz, looking at some areas, right? Like so this is, let's look at the behind the scene. This is the admin, right? The admin side of this particular web app, right? We don't have an admin extension here, right? So it is good night. So even if I land on home, home is going to take me to just the URL. So if I go in and configure security, right, it takes me to the security PHP. If I, let's say that if I go to like, setup, right, it goes to setup. So there's no admin extension. Um, knowing that you should be able to interpret the result like what is shown, right? I don't really have any success in this, but it didn't really give me any kind of summary for error either, right? It generates it and maybe you can look at it closer further to the right and also the process. So you don't have as much detail in the attempt to look for admin, right? So what can we conclude? Okay. That means that there's no admin panel, is it? Right? Because you don't have any code 200. And that's true because the web app itself doesn't have an admin panel. There is some kind of administration, but through using additional different extension, right? So when you assess web app, you look for that. Um, if it has it with an admin, that's a vulnerability, right? We need to fix that problem. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look for file type. So when I look at this web app, I already know that, yeah, there is a PHP right here, right? There's a lot of web application that use things like this. .pdf, .word, .doc, JPEG, where you can actually get the file if you land on that. You use that extension to the URL, right? So we are going to use this tool and we're going to plug in different file extension to see if there's a match. And similar to what you've done there, right? And in this one, we are using a different word list. So I would recommend that you check out seclist word list and see which one is appropriate, right? This type of assessment is only effective if the word list is effective. And you're going to see that later on, right? We're going to use something for the username and password. So if you don't want to use what they offer, you can customize your own text file. You can create it. You can edit the text file that you have downloaded and modified. So tools like this, right, use components that you can get from the internet or you can make yourself. Okay, so fairly fast. Now, if you use a very long word list, right, and if your system is slow, you just have to wait a little bit. So take a screenshot, right? If you look for status code 200. So I know that there is a setup page, bless you, right? That one is there. You can go up and down the output. About, that one is there. Login, that one is there, right? Where the other one just showed that it's permanently moved. Instructions, that one is there. Okay. And the rest are just empty. So some word lists are longer, some word lists are shorter. So did it find any HTML file? No, right? Because this particular web app is written in PHP specifically. A lot of the other web app that you're going to find, it's going to find HTML. So you can extend this to other file extension that can be used with the word list, like PDF, right? Doc, JPG, others outside of just, and even text file. Okay. Now let's clean up, right? So we saw that we have to kind of scroll up a little bit to look at the result. But if there's a way that you can just get the result that you need by the filtering it inside the command. So we're going to use the same word list, but in this one, we're going to look for only the status code 200 when we're searching for the URL extension with the file extension by fuzzing it. So the same kind of fuzz, but we are going to only have the output for success with the successful input. Maybe it doesn't clean it up as I expected, huh? Oh yeah, it did. So as you can see, right, it still showed kind of long, but it did not include the 301 status code, right? It only gives you the 200. So which is nice because if you have a very long list or if it can find many, right, you don't have to comb through it and look for which one is 300, which one is 200. And in this one, we just use the MC extension after our word list file. So you use MC and then you put in the status code that you want to filter. Okay? And you can count them up. Okay. Now we're going to try to input the user name and the password into the web app, right? So, like I said, before you do this, you need to be familiar with the web app as an interface, as content, right? So I would create a user account, I would go in, I would look around, I would check out like the tabs and the menus. How did I log in and where's my URL and all of those things. That's the beginning part of web app assessment. I can't talk today. All right. So in this one, we are going to plug in the username from one list, right? And a password from another list. Okay. And this is a way that we can access the web app by attempting different username and passwords with brute forcing. Now, when you look at this command, you say, well, Dr. Nguyen, why is it that we're not using the same URL as before? Because this particular web application, it has the login that you see at the beginning, right, which uses a .login PHP, or you can also brute force here, right? It has another level of form to input the value. So when you are fuzzing, you have to navigate through and say, where can I input? Where can I fuzz and where is the input, right? Which form should I use? Is it the login? Is it a field that I can enter some kind of data, right? Typically, when we brute force, we need to have some kind of login, okay? So, can you use the login extension to that? You can, sometimes not successful, sometimes you are, right? So make sure you run the entire command from fuff all the way to the root at the end, okay? So back to the terminal. We're going to run the next command here, right? And I purposely use a short list for the username. Some lists can be millions, thousands, right? You just have to wait till it's done enumerating through that list, username or password, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you there so you can see what kind of files you can use. Okay. So if you're curious, you can cd into the path where sec list lives, right? And then if you do ls, there's like payloads, file, there's username, there's web shells. They built out a lot of these things already. So when you're using tools, you just plug in the content that they have built. So under password, if I cd into passwords, right, you can see that there's all of these files that you can use, right? Like corporate passwords, common credential, that's also a subfolder, so you have to cd into it. Keyboard walks, honeypot captures, there's a malware, there's a lot of things that are in here under password folder, right? Not just passwords text file, but other things. Okay. All right. So now you see how that's done. So how many entry did you find? That's 200. And if it's not successful, right? All of my that just means that my list didn't get a match. Try another list, right? Username, another list of password. And that's how they brute force. So if you have account lockout, it's just gonna throw an error and you're gonna get a code that shows error and there's no match, right? Or timeout. Hold on a second.
Yes. Are all these lines supposed to be the engagement ones?
No. They're the ones that it's oh for the PHP file? No. Yeah.
So what are they counting? I'm not. I was using that one, but the
Yeah, so the only it's only the status code 200 is what
yeah.
Slow down. Yeah, it should be. Okay, scroll up. When you run that once, it should be. Which one is right? Yeah, you're just plugging in that and repeat if it's. So if you don't have. Should be just like the next. You should see like which page. Yeah, that's an admin one. We don't have an admin. That's on step 20. Yeah, you don't have when it shows like this, it just means that there's no slash admin. Yeah, the app doesn't do that. The way that we access this, if it's a URL.
Yes.
You can't see open for that. Yeah, see, the admin access it in different tabs here, but when you click off, so instructions has responsibility, you know, so it doesn't have an admin page. And if it has an admin, like a slash admin, then it will be an admin. So I explained that here to you. It says, if there's not an output status code, 700 admin can't know where it's not. But that's just because that means that there's no admin, right? Extension to the URL. That's just part of the way the website or the web app is developed. Okay, where were we? Oh, yeah. So I did a fix on SEP 32 because there was a change in the file that I previously used. So we're gonna do another brute force. And the file that I used before went away. On the new download, there's a new file that you can use, but you can use any of the ones in the folder that you can find. So first, we're going to navigate to the username folder in seclist, right? So you're going to do a cd command for change directory, and you're going to go into that folder. And if you want to check like what's in that folder, just do an ls. I didn't write this down, but we should know how to list the content. So these are some of the username files. And you can, so when you see it in blue like this, that's just subfolder that you can also go in and look. But these are like some of the username that you can find. Now, SAP is for SAP systems, right? The top username shortlist, you already saw that we use that, but you can cat it to look at the content. If you want to, if you use Zato, or this is the type of network systems that you would use. So 10 million usernames, hence the name. So some lists are longer than others. If you want common admin type of accounts like admin, administrator, etc., right? You can go, but you get my point. Okay. So once you're in that directory, you're gonna run this command. It's still a brute force with fuzzing. Okay. Now I'm going to explain the command because I did that on Monday. We are going to access, right, the 10,000 most common password list. So it's longer than what we've done in the past. It's going to plug the password into the second field labeled W2, right? Whereas the username goes into the first field that's labeled W1. And we are going to plug in the username from the short list and the password from the 10K most common. So this one runs a little longer. It's because it's just using the password list that is longer, right? And in that, it's going to do a post method because anytime that you input data into a web app, you are posting, right, to the server. And it's going to plug in the username W1 and the password W2. So it correlates like the first list to W1 and the second list to W2. Each word goes into that, right? And um and this is the website that we need, and we're interested in verbose. That means more text output detail. And we are going to have status code 200. So you're going to go through, right? You're going to see that a lot of the words might not even be in the area that we're looking at. So like I said before, your word list needs to be effective for the objective of your scan or your tool. Okay, so wait for that. Take a screenshot. How many requests was generated? You should look at the progress. It will tell you that. Were the word lists effective? Did you see any kind of things that were discovered too? Right? So it tells you that, oh yeah, it plugs in admin and it plugs in, this is the password. Pretty straightforward. Likely that if your password and your username list is not good, right, it won't find anything. Okay. Now we're going to look at I just want to make sure because sometimes my screen share goes away. In the next part, we're going to do sfuzz real quick. And sfuzz, you have to install, right? So before you install, you need to come back to your home directory by doing a cd command. You need to get out of where all those lists are, right? And after you get back to the home directory, you are going to install sfuzz, which is another tool. Then we input in our system password. So once our tool is installed, we're going to do a help option. And this tool, similar to the other one, you can use an option with it to be able to accomplish something. So if you want to perform literal fuzzing, which is what you saw in the last one where you plug in text string, right? Like letters, and characters. So you can plug in literal, or you can plug in some sequence, okay? And so go down the list and find how you would be able to perform literal fuzzing or sequence fuzzing. Which option should you use? Now what we're going to do is we are going to create a configuration file for our app. In Linux, we're going to use nano or text editor. You can call it first fuzz, right? .config. This is a new file with nothing in it. It's just an empty text file or configuration file right now. And what you're going to do is you are going to define your literals, right? Kind of like making your own list. But in this tool, you are going to pass in. So here is the definition of your literal, which is a variable that contains, the characters. And then it's going to bring in the text, the literals that you want, right? Which is, it could be numbers or letters. And then you can also bring in sequences, right? Things like sequence for social security number, for driver license, for, I don't know, phone number, stuff like that is sequence. So we're gonna go ahead and copy where the hashtag begin here, all the way down to the double dash after the word fuzz. So we're gonna copy that. I purposely put it on a different font. And then we're gonna go ahead and paste it into our text file, right? So once we have all the literal definition and the sequence definition in this configuration file, you always want to end with these components. It's gonna throw an error if you don't, right? Okay, so now once you have that, you're gonna press Control X, right? Y and enter. So you made the configuration file with the definition for the literal. Now you are gonna use it. So we're gonna run this command where you're gonna plug in that file for the application. You're gonna use that file with the application. So it's gonna show that, yeah, it went through, right? It took your literal that you define and it plugs it in. It executes the function. It took the sequence that you gave it and it attempt to fuzz. So fuzzing is about inputting something, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be things for success, right? We want to see if there's some kind of error. So that's how you use sfuzz. But so by using sfuzz, you can use it with the configuration file with what you want to enter. It automates that for you. So take a screenshot, what kind of data was used to fuzz your literal, which is characters and numbers or even symbols, and then also pattern, which is sequence. Sequence is not pattern. Sequence is like like a format of data. That's format. It's not even also a right word. Like a structure type of data, right? Like phone number have so many digits and so on. But anyway, and in certain order could be. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to modify our configuration file, and we're only going to add this highlighted line, okay? Basically, I'm teaching you how to edit your file so that way it displays something. So we're going to nano back into our configuration file. Use your arrow key, go all the way to the end, right? In between nconfig and fuzz, give it an empty line and paste in fuzz or no fuzz with the curly brace, right? Just paste in the highlighted line and take away the word fuzz. Oops, below that. So you just need to, or you can put the curly brace around the fuzz and then add the word no fuzz exclamation point. So we're just going to add the line between nconfig and the double hyphen at the end, right? Once you do that, you're going to press Control X, yes, and enter to update and save your file. And then we're going to repeat the execution from the prior step using the new updated information on that file, right? So it's still the same literal and sequence, but if you scroll up, right, it tells you whether it's fuzz or no fuzz, right? Bless you. If it was not successful, it will be like no fuzz. It didn't plug that in. If it did fuzz, then it's attempting fuzz, right? So it's a way that we can control the output on what was done and what was not done. So take a screenshot. The main difference is you scroll up and you see this section, right? Compared to the previous output, the display doesn't contain what you have added. That just changes the display, which is the result of what the application had done, right? Okay, so that's just displaying some message that you want there. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in some kind of timeout or delay. We're gonna let it wait 200 milliseconds, which might be very little for you, but sometime that can also give your system resources. And, if you're doing like hyper-threading or, so the number of core and the limited, sometimes this can be useful in if you have a delay. You are going to also display something different, right, about your host name in the output, because I might be running multiple terminal with different processors, right, on my machine, and I wanted to show like each web app differently so you can modify the configuration for this, okay? So we're gonna nano back into our configuration file. You are going to go down to the end, right? Right here. And you are going to add these things above the double hyphen. Okay. I'm just going to copy and paste this entire thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to delete these two lines and then give myself an empty line and paste in the copy text. So I just copied the whole thing. You can do line by line. So add the highlighted before nconfig and then another line. But at the end, you need to have the double hyphen, the dash dash there. Okay? So just add those and then Control X, yes, enter. And then we're going to rerun We're going to repeat that. Yep.
What's the command? Get the result for those fuzz.
You use the same command. All you did was you changed your configuration file to display things that were fuzz or things that were no fuzz. I'm not sure I'm understanding you. Yeah, just check your output from the last command to the next command. There's a section. So here I have the display, right? Where it shows no fuzz. If you're looking at attempting fuzz and it gives you the summary here, if you compare that to the last output, it didn't have the no fuzz. So are you skipping steps? I'm not sure why you're not getting the last one.
Let's see. 7.
So I'm not sure I'm understanding why you're not getting the output. So just scroll up and look for the output. Are you not seeing it from the last step? That's the first one. Yeah. Right, without the no fuzz. Okay. Now did you run it with the new update? Did you run it again? So you create the configuration file, you run it and it shows that, right? Yeah. Okay. Then you modify the configuration file. Now you run it again to see the difference. Same command. Same command. Up arrow key twice. Yeah. Or copy paste. Oh, really? Yeah, because you modified this file, so we wanted to see what's changed. It looks like you. Yeah.
I would expect to find those terminals. Yeah, that's how I you got 80 fuzz. Oh, yeah. And I think you went through the still edition. You could even. Oh, super. That's the same. There's a lot of sun. Actually,
so these are the each for vagrant, Azure user, those are, right?
Yes.
Okay, and it tells you how long that it took for each one. So it basically took a list, enumerate through that list, means each item on that list, and plug it into the function, right?
Needs to line.
Yes, that's a good one. Some lists are longer than the other. Is there any reason for progress?
Okay, so 17 words.
Some also is longer, with some are shorter. But it was using 4K lists and expect 4 bands. So depends on the list. We see the difference? Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, all that is to give you a display specifically for certain things, right? All right. Now I did the weight configuration, right? I'm gonna run it again. And what it does is there is also like it shows me my host name that it attempted these patterns or the sequence, and then there is a pause in between. So when you do await in the request, it has that pause and you can change this value. So if you want the pause to be longer, you can increase that number, right? That's in milliseconds, where if you want it shorter, you can reduce that number. So that's really up to you. Typically 200 is pretty standard, but and you do see a little bit of difference in the output where there is that the time that it works and it's pausing, right? And in the display, it shows you which system that is fuzzing, because we put that here in the configuration file. So if you want a certain server information, you can put that right inside your configuration file. So that's what I'm trying to tell you or show you how to be able to include the configuration information about your system, right? So take a screenshot, right? Compared to the prior step, what's the difference? Yeah, your display, your wait time, it shows your host name and the service, right? Where it would sequence or plug in different characters. There you go. Okay, almost done. Now what we're going to do is we are going to fuzz for a specific port on that host, right? Our local web application server, we're going to look for port 80. It's going to fuzz port 80. So you can do a -p following the IP address that is used for public host of that web app, and you would use the option capital S. Okay. And so it gives you some HTML header information. Um, if you get a 400, that's just an error, right? Bad request. So it's going to try to plug in various things to be able to fuzz it. But it does give you some information like the server software or for the service. So it fingerprinted a little bit through the process. So even if we're getting an error, we get some information about the server, you see? Like bad requests here. So because the application itself doesn't have all of the characters, all of the things that we put in the configuration file. So if you want more success, right, modify your configuration literal to and sequence to realistic web app that the components of the web app, just like what we saw in the last tool. Not just A, B, B, C, C, D, D, right? But you get the point. Plug in the characters that's meaningful to that web app. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So in the past, if you go way, way back when I first taught this class, this is successful. But now they just block us. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna repeat the last command. It's okay. And you're gonna replace the IP address with the domain information. So you can use domain name or IP address, right? So it's gonna still fuzz with your oh, I'm not getting oh yes, it should say it says connection denied. Uh yeah, so this is like basically a site that was typically used for testing PHP. I borrowed the site to see if you can fuzz your PHP site. But anyways, so at some point you are going to get like Yeah, it should say connection reviews. I'm gonna time out before they think that I'm really attacking them, so. But it's a testing site, so you know. But anyways, you should get some kind of error similar to what I have. Now, in a successful case, right? Um, if you have a match in your literal or pattern, then you would not get any kind of error. You would be able to, similar to the other tool, you would see that there's a match at port 80. Okay, so if it's a vulnerable web app, so we can use this to determine if that web app is vulnerable or not using specific port like port 80 and also the literal that you create or the sequence that you use. So now you know two tool and two technique. So upon completing this lab, right? So there's no status code in this one. It just times out in connection. Some of it is too that like where are you coming from? If it's an unknown IP, sometimes they block you, you know. So there's a lot of factor that's being involved in the result of things like this. But we did learn how to fuzz, right? Using two different tools. You can go back and look at what you've done. And it is a way that we can try different input to see if it's successful or unsuccessful. And based on the result, we can determine whether there's components or feature in that web app, if there's credential problems with that web app or like admin, what is it? Console or centralized location where the admin would be able to manage that web app. So that those things are considered vulnerability in your web application, and we can, you know, maybe redesign the web app or remove some of the features that might impose security problem, right? And then you can answer the last question, C. What should you do to improve your system security after you get the results? So afterwards, we're going to do shutdown now. And let me end my video.